Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Apologies for yesterday, but we had Bibi Netanyahu in town and I couldn't get to my office because it's about 100 meters from his hotel. Normally come here at about 6:45 and gave up, and then took me about an hour to get home, and I worked from home, so it's quite an adventure. But what was interesting was I took this drive around the perimeter of Nairobi, and it was really remarkable because you tend to stick to the main roads, and I had to sort of work my way around them. And what I saw was an eye-opener, frankly. Macro thoughts. This goes back to something I wrote in August 2014. I said, my view is the new normal is a very arrhythmic world, and I was speaking both about geopolitics and about economics. I said picking up the signal through the noise of our world in 2014 is no easy thing. In fact, my view is the new normal is a very arrhythmic world. When I plugged arrhythmia into my computer, it threw this up. For years, he'd been studying the phenomenon of chaos, of which an arrhythmic heartbeat was a perfect example. Home thoughts, Pablo Neruda. I want to do with you what spring does with the cherry trees. And then a quote I found by Kesey: if you seek the mystery instead of the answer, you'll always be seeking. Political reflections. Let's go back to Saudi Arabia. Militants escalated their campaign against Saudi Arabia's Al Saud family with 3 suicide attacks in a single day, in the biggest challenge to the kingdom's security. One of the bombings on Monday near the Prophet's Mosque in the holy city of Medina targeted the heart of the Al Saud's family's legitimacy, its custodianship of Islam's 2 holiest shrines. If coordinated, the bombings would demonstrate the ability of IS to strike multiple times in the kingdom within a 24-hour framework, and as such suggest that the kingdom has a real problem. My conclusions are that the kingdom is as fragile as a Fabergé egg. Jamie McGeever tweeted this, the front page of today's Scott National, Tony Blair of course. And the point to note about this sort of Corbyn coup is that it's all about fending off the Chilcot inquiry. Corbyn took a very hard line in this matter and said that if there was prima facie evidence, then he wanted to charge Tony Blair with war crimes. And I think it's that which has triggered this response more than the Brexit fallout. FBI's Comey says no reasonable prosecutor would bring a case against Clinton for the emails. And therefore, I think this election is Hillary Clinton's for the taking, with the proviso that Trump is very beholden to event risk. You can imagine if there's a big terrorist attack, 24 hours, 48 hours before the election, then all bets are off. Let's move on to the currency markets. Euro, dollar, 110.69 when I looked last. Dollar index, 96.26. Japanese yen, 101.17. Swissy, 0.9787. The pound got below 128, then rallied all the way to just shy of 130. And now is heading back down again. But, it's just all over the place. Aussie, 0.7456. India rupee, 67.529. South Korean won, 1163.07. The rial, which looks expensive and they've been intervening, is 3.3023. Egyptian pound, 8.8765. And the rand, 14.812. And the rand finding some stability because of the price of gold, which is at a 2014 high. I wrote a piece over the weekend, Brexit Political and Financial Shockwaves. On the 27th of June, I said HSBC cut its forecast for the pound to 120, and I said that was just slightly less than my prediction of 125 from June 13. What is certain is that you sell any rebounds in the pound for now, is what I said. The pound tumbled again as the sell-off resumed, and it started just before Carney spoke. It hit a fresh post-Brexit low of 1.3113, which was the lowest level in 31 years. But in the early hours of the morning, and so much happens in the early hours, really, the pound broke below 128. And have a look at the chart David Inglis put out. Carney said there is a prospect of a material slowing of the economy. And I'll put up a photograph of him and take you back to the 4th of July. When I listened to the Bank of England Governor Mark Carney on Thursday, I thought to myself how strange it is that the most intelligent voice in the United Kingdom in these matters has turned out to be Carney, and he is Canadian. The so-called counter-cyclical buffer for UK banks was cut to zero from 0.5% of risk-weighted assets, freeing up some cash for the banks. Put up a 3-month chart of the dollar index. I think whether they raise rates or not, it looks like they're not going to now. I still think the dollar's going up. Euro-dollar, I think parity is calling. This is the Frexit, Nexit, Italexit risk now. Commodity markets, this morning I had a look at the prices and I tweeted gold and silver, precious metals, not the entire commodity complex, in essence, have a ticket to the moon, given the scenario we're looking at. Spot gold touched its highest since March 2014 at $1,371.40. It surpassed the 1,358.20 mark hit on the 24th of June. Put up a 6-month chart, the target now is 1,400. Crude oil falls as much as 0.9% in New York, extending declines. This is what happens when you turn off the Niger Delta Avengers Twitter handle, said Zero H tongue-in-cheek. Crude oil, $46.66 in New York. Last time I looked, the bull market is terminated. Corn futures are heading back to a bear market. Have a look at that chart. Let's move on to Sub-Saharan Africa. Twin crises expose Angola's failure to kick its oil habit. A month ago, a 17-ton shipment of bananas left Angola for Portugal in what state media heralded as a first symbolic badge in the resurgence of a farming sector wiped out by civil war. Africa's top oil producer needs more than a container load of fruit to solve a financial and economic crisis, compounded by a public health crisis that has laid bare the failings of the diversification mantra of Jose Eduardo dos Santos, its president for the last 37 years. I'm reading a great book written quite a while ago by Karl Mayer called Angola, Something in Lies. I can't remember exactly, very interesting and very similar to what the situation is now. Oil wealth turned Angola into Sub-Saharan Africa's third biggest economy. Beyond the high-rises on the capital's Dubai-style coastal promenade, the problems are plain to see. Squalor is a breeding ground for vermin, flies and disease, and health experts say it is no coincidence that a yellow fever epidemic that started in December in one of Luanda's vast slums has spread across the country and beyond, reaching even China. Luanda is dirty, disgusting, said 58-year-old businessman Antonio Bobby, edging past a vagrant rummaging through a mound of trash. The government doesn't do anything. There's no responsibility. You should see the rats, they're huge. If you have friends, government friends, you can get dollars. If not, nothing. We hope the situation changes, but at the moment there's no light at the end of the tunnel. Angola churns out 1.8 million barrels a day from its offshore fields and is China's leading crude supplier, but those petrodollars come at a price. Oil accounts for 40% of GDP, 70% of government revenues, 95% of foreign exchange income, leaving the nation of 25 million people dangerously exposed to fluctuations in world oil markets. The fragilities of the post-conflict state that Dos Santos has built are being exposed in Paulo Roque. The whole rhetoric of Angola rising no longer holds. Then talking about the currency, which is down more than 40% in the last year against the dollar, the official central bank rate. Available only to a lucky few individuals and firms, the rate is of little consequence to ordinary Angolans who have to rely on a black market where the kwanza is worth as little as 570 to the dollar, less than a third of its official value of 165. Talking about the appointment of Isabel dos Santos, Africa's richest woman, to the head of Sonangol, She's talking, saying it's not because of politics. I was brought into this project because of my experience from the private business sector, she said. Alex Vine says it's not about Isabel becoming president. The regime relies on Sonangol. It's the goose that lays the golden egg. And the reason she wasn't put in charge is because it needs serious reform. Whether she's going to be the one reforming it, I think it's more a question of fending off forensic audits, because I think a lot of money's gone missing. And as I said severally, and again in January 2016, I said there's no Hail Mary pass coming for the commodity producers. And from Abuja to Luanda, from Lusaka to Johannesburg, the denouement is still ahead. And the case of Angola, very much so. Zimbabwe deploys police in capital up before strike over pay. Zimbabwe deployed police in townships around the capital Harare on Wednesday amid calls for a strike by state workers over an economic collapse that has led to a shortage of cash, import controls, and the failure of the government to pay salaries on time. While the government warned workers not to join the stay away, some schools have closed and there was little traffic on main roads into the city. The labour action was called following the Finance Ministry's announcement that it was delaying pay for state workers, including the military, and riots on Monday sparked by protests by taxi drivers over alleged police harassment. My conclusions are that we're watching Zimbabwe now tip into complete disequilibrium. South African all-share up 1.93% this year, dollar rand 14.8121, getting support from gold. Egyptian EGX 30 is up 2.52% this year. Nigerian all-share up 1.27% this year. Ghana Stock Exchange Composite Index down 10.45%. Coming to Kenya, Netanyahu says to Israeli investors, Kenya is taking off. Be part of the yeast in this cake. I attended the bell ringing ceremony for KenGen's new rights shares this morning, and the CEO Albert Mugo said we remain unwavering in our desire to deliver outstanding returns for our shareholders. I've got quite a few of those shares, but I think they're very cheap. I've done my maths. Even after the dilution, this is trading on a price earnings ratio of 3.614. That, in my estimation, is a bargain. Nairobi all share down 3.75% this year. NSE 20 down 9.21% this year, but has closed at a 10-day high. Once again, I'd like to thank you for coming to my podcast. I'm grateful. We are going to the Masai Mara to go and see the migration on Friday. My camera people are moving ahead of me. Rufus does the editing, so you'll have to excuse us, but we'll be out of action tomorrow and Friday. But if you're interested in seeing what we're seeing in the Mara, follow myself, at Alikhan Satchu, ALYKHANSATCHU, particularly from Friday, when we'll be in the Mara and taking a look at the migration, which is a spectacular event which I haven't seen since I was a little boy. So I'm looking forward to that. Once again, thank you for stopping by.